call this special meeting of 5:20 on December 12th to order, and I'm going to turn it over to our Parks Director, Rob Steinberg.
Thanks. So we're going to pass a few things out. And we're going to kind of go through this in a three-pronged way. So if you allow us a little bit of time to give the explanation, we have plenty of time for questions. And we're not going to dive too deep into the weeds unless you guys need more information. So the first thing you're going to see is the concert series for 2024. Bill's passing out. This is the Thursday night concert series. I think what you're going to see, and Bill's going to touch on in a moment, is the level of quality, the different genres from pop, rock, big band, Motown, country, indie rock. And I think what you're going to see eventually in the next piece of collateral you're going to get is some free programming with Stark Library, NCY. We've had conversations with Anytime Fitness in the Plaza, Revival Dance Studio, playing local schools again, Stark Library, of course the 720 folks. And I'll touch on another free event that's pretty high profile that Jason's Place in the Plaza in partnership with Stark DD approaches about. Going to be a great community service, great opportunity to brand at a very high level and set us up for some future grant opportunities with some leverage and some of those things. So again, without boring you too much with those little things, the Thursday night concert series, we decided to start on June 13th. Stay away from some of the early June weather. What we did is I called around to a few of the local high schools that surround us and talked about dates they have. A lot of them are prior to that week, but so many of them are doing them in their own stadiums now that if they rain, they just push it back 1 week. So we're just trying to stay away from those issues and create a captive audience. When we start, Michael Cavanaugh is the first one. I'm going to turn it over to Bill here in just a couple seconds, but ultimately 10 shows, 3 in June, 3 in July, 4 in August, really high quality. Michael Cavanaugh is the one we would start with if we haven't talked about it already. Michael Cavanaugh played Billy Joel on Broadway and Moving Out. Is a national touring artist and does a fantastic job. So Bill, did you want to touch on the kind of your calendar of bands and how you came to those bands?
What I tried to do, we had talked about in several meetings, just keeping it real diverse. Whenever you're in a community type amphitheater, you're covering a lot of ground with people's musical taste and also ages. We have people that are, thinking a lot of them like classic rock, but then you have the orchestral stuff, you have some of the pop artists. So what I did was we went through, and I think when you have a facility as nice as this, and we kind of started off with a very quality show with the brass transit, kind of set the tone that we're going to do some pretty good type music or better type artists. We're not really going to try to, we're not boo-hooing doing other things here. We'll have a lot of free events. We'll have some community events. We'll have some regional artists as well. But this is just kind of highlighting some we can bring in. So we went through and I looked at, as he mentioned, the Billy Joel tribute with Michael Cavanaugh. He played last year, or 2 years ago, he played at Tuscarora's Kent Stark, the theater down in New Philly, and sold it out. He's playing December 15th at E.J. Thomas. So we're doing our approaches to get people that will kind of get a buzz going. And these Thursday nights will be focused on that. Again, doesn't take away from using the local regional stuff that we're doing with 720, bringing some different artists in that way. As you look through the lineup, you'll see we went to Motown. That's a group out of Dayton, 13-piece with horns, really great band. The third show, Bad Company, is a band that we booked. They're actually out of Cleveland, so we got a really good price on them. So sometimes if you stay regional, you can grab discounts. So I tried to look for ones that have good draw, tend to be, again, fit the model of what we're doing. Brian Dupree is one of our last one we added. He's from, he lives in Dallas, but he's a Frank Sinatra tribute artist, does the Rat Pack show, he does Vegas. He does concerts that can price out at $25 to $75 a ticket because it's a very specific big band. He'll bring in a full 11-piece band with horns, the whole thing. So that his show is really, really different than anything else we're doing, and we like that. I think we all talked about that would be a good fit. I'm amazed how many people know Sinatra music. My kids do, and you wouldn't think they would care, but you hear it all over the films, and we hear their music everywhere, his music. The Boston Tribute Band is out of LA. I do what's called routing. I try to find a group that's coming through, and if they're going to be maybe somewhere else near here, we try to route them in. The reason we picked Thursday night concert series is because we can do that. Thursdays are great when you go to a band that says, hey, we're playing in Pittsburgh on Friday, how about we route you through Plain Township? So that's what I did, and we were able to get Boston, this Boston tribute band, they're called the Rock and Roll Band, you can catch them on YouTube. They're considered the #1 Boston, if you like Boston, so I won't start humming songs. The Vindies are an indie band that actually is more appealing to the millennials. They do a lot of stuff around here from Youngstown, hence the name Vindies after, I guess, the Vindicator newspaper.
They're really good.
They're really good. And the lead singer, Jackie, crazy good voice. And they do some covers too. Like they'll throw stuff in on Stevie Ray Vaughan and some other music. So I like their diversity. They'll be on the 25th. And then in August, we're adding a country, really good Zac Brown tribute band called Uncaged. Like I said, really well. And they also, I tend to lean in on bands that really bring in a full show. I've never liked when they just play tracks behind them and sing. I kind of like the live band. We got a great venue. We have a 40 by 80 stage, so let's use the stage. And we have those great risers that we have that we'll bring out. So the Zac Brown band. Then I have, the next one is more for my wife. She loves the boy band music, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, New Kids on the Block. This is a show that is all about high energy. I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of people come down that wanna just listen to that music. And I think it's a very high energy show. I like the music, not necessarily planning to see me down front, waving glow sticks, even though if you go online.
Now I expect it.
Yeah, there will be glow sticks for sale. I don't know, Rob and I'll be going through the crowd.
There you go.
The Elton John tribute was a good one. He's been in through the area and sells out shows. That's not why I booked him. He's actually a great show because he does Elton as pure as I've seen Elton done for a tribute type show. So Elton Ron's a good one. We've worked with him before. He's coming in from Canada. And then Escape, which is actually from Cleveland area. I've known Paul Seuss, who's the guitar player, for a long time, 30 years. They do an excellent show. They've sold out some of the regional amphitheaters, just so it's nice when you know they can go in and they're kind of in demand. Those are the kind. So our lineup, as you can see, what I like to also look at is this gives us a launch for next year too, that all of a sudden we look at, okay, who did we miss? What kind of styles could we fit in the next year? And then you can also rotate these through. So that's our lineup right now that we've got under contract. Haven't done anything yet, but they're holding contracts for us. So we're ready and poised to move ahead.
And then we'll finish up on September 5th with a free show. That is the Canton Symphony's Summer Serenade with Stark
Parks.
We're able to lock in that date, so they'll be out here at obviously no charge to us to put on that show. So that helps kind of round out what we feel is a pretty good variety in genre, a pretty strong talent pool, pretty high quality, and it kind of helps us set the tone for the standard with which we're going to offer. And as we talk about that, obviously we have to talk about the budget. Bill's going to pass out budgets here. Let's hit a couple of the points of the budget as you're waiting on seeing it, because he's broken it down by show. And he's broken it down in a way that shows us kind of the all-in cost, all-in revenues, and where they come from. So when you talk about budget, you talk about covering that cost first and foremost. Obviously, sponsorship is a big part of that. We're continuing to push sponsorship. We're waiting on calls back with partners to sit in some pretty high-level meetings with some pretty high dollar amounts. We've just sent the renewals out and the installment payments out for the larger $3,500 sponsors that shows the payment plans to be coming in at the first of the year. So we're going to continue to hit sponsorship. We always hit sponsorship. It's ongoing. The reason we're talking about sponsorship first, as you see your summer concert series, is because if we can launch the concert series with some momentum, it'll build momentum to continue to build that sponsorship when you show the level of acts, what those acts have brought in from attendance to ticket sales across the board. You're going to show a footprint of where they've been, what they've done already, and what they can do here to attract sponsors when you talk about some of those assets. Obviously, when you talk about budget and you talk about sponsorship, that's a part of the thing. But what we wanted to present today as well is the idea of ticketing. And the reason the idea of ticketing is because it'll fill a stopgap for what we can't cover in sponsorship. Now, having said all that, you have a bunch of sheets in front of you with a bunch of numbers, and you're going to look at them and you're going to know them. So the reality is, what we tried to forecast is really conservative efforts with these high-quality bands. If we brought in 1,500 tickets, or 1,750 tickets, or 2,000 tickets, and our capacity is 2,500 for tickets, what does that look like, breakdown-wise, for a concert, okay? And we'll talk about ticketing in a bit, because we have ideas on ticketing that we'd like to share and see how you guys feel about that concept, but just in the event of we'll call it a basic $10 ticket. And again, we're gonna get into the weeds a little bit when we talk about ticketing specifically, so I don't wanna pin too hard on that right now. But the idea of ticketing is even if we hit 75% of our goals with sponsorship and ticketing, we would be net neutral. It means all costs would be met. When I say all costs, let me be clear. It's all of the vendor costs, be it the band, if we brought in extra lighting, our sound tech, our really high dollar, high talent, diva, bill, and the department costs that come with that, okay? The department costs that come with that, because our goal would be, and I believe there's something on the agenda tonight, but I don't want to speak out of turn here, would be to funnel those monies into the general fund, because then they can turn around and reimburse the departments for their costs. So it's 75% of everything. You're looking at roughly a net neutral finish, which means all costs are paid for, all general fund dollars spent up front are completely reimbursed, and then we're not using levy dollar funds to accomplish sustaining what we would consider very high quality programming. Then Bill forecasts based on his, I'm gonna say this, 48 years of, I think it's 36, but I'll say 48 years of experience in forecasting what it looks like on a basic $10 ticket at 1,500 tickets or 1,750 tickets or whatever. And I think what you'll see is even on the low end, after all costs are met, you're looking at a revenue of roughly $25,000 that could be reinvested in infrastructure or programming for the next year. The goal would be to hit closer to that middle range, which you probably see on there is right around 56.5. Again, I want to be clear, after all expenses are met, that's 56.5, to reinvest into the programming and create what we would consider an annuity, so that the amphitheater is being sustained by the people that are utilizing its service and its programming, not necessarily that of general fund dollars. Because obviously, like everything else in this world, there's a limited well to dig into. So you want to drive urgency to get people there to enjoy an experience they can keep coming back and renew. And that's why we were so adamant about, as you see the genres, why we presented it first, bringing in different genres. So there's people who get something new if they continue to return each week. We'll also bring in the niche crowds that like, maybe they only like Motown, maybe they only like the Zac Brown Band, maybe they only like Journey, but they'll come for those concerts because they know they're still getting those. We're not creating a rock concert series, we're not creating a country series. I understand it's revenue stream, I promise. But we're creating opportunities to grow in the future and do things in different ways. So nobody said, yes, we're ticketing, we understand that, but we wanted to come with the idea of ticketing, what its benefits are. I think when you look at the benefits outside of just the revenue, is one, you're creating urgency. You're telling people, this is a group that people pay to see and are coming in from wherever they're coming in from, and it's going to be a packed house. I'm going to let Bill touch on this as soon as I step away about the budget and where these people will come from to see these bands because of the next step, which is what we would consider the ticketing step. You're putting a value on the entertainment they're getting in the amphitheater. It's not just come, see an ancillary event, whatever music's on stage as background. You're getting a real live, high-quality concert and a real production for what we would consider a really reasonable price. And again, I will get into specifics with ticketing because I think you're going to see it's not just $10 that we're thinking about. There are ways to do it and ways to do it in tiered ways. And then the other thing you're creating when you do ticketing and you're creating urgency and you're creating a value is you're also creating an opportunity to hit a database with what I'm going to have Bill come up and talk about in his experience with something like Eventbrite, that puts that word out there early and often, so when we launch our calendar and we potentially launch ticket sales, we get money in the coffers early to start funding the costs of what this looks like while we continue to hit sponsorship, while we continue to hit promotion, while we continue to hit sales. So I'm going to bring Bill back up because he's got a far greater experience in this ticketing thing, in particular with Eventbrite, and kind of how those numbers come to play that you came up with.
Before we jump to that, like on some of these numbers, like looking at advertising, $250, where are we advertising for $250? That is nothing.
You'll like this when I tell how I do it.
All right, well, I'll look forward to
Yeah,
that.
that's a good question.
I think one of the other things, now that we do ticket, we we have to be all the more in tune. We were able last year with everything being free, our cancellation of a show, that's gonna create some other dynamics that we have not dealt
You're
with.
right. We're gonna
The
get-
reality
we're gonna
is,
get into that.
I'm just,
Those are all
take
very
the
good.
opportunity to speak
Yeah.
to, is that, listen, unless there's a torrential monsoon, hey, rain or shine to
You do
a
it.
certain degree, because otherwise, hey, you guys reschedule. No, I want my money back. I bought it for this day, this time, and I'm sure that creates a whole logistical nightmare.
Well,
for-
and
for
we're gonna talk
some.
to those
Okay.
things, yeah, I promise, that's why
ahead.
we're trying to get through this part, and then that ticketing will bring in those
Yeah,
conversations.
you'll hear all that.
So, why don't, since you brought it up, let's hit ticketing and what we would see that looking like with the tiered spectrum
Yeah.
and some of the other assets, and then we'll bring in what that looks like for scheduling as well,
All right.
okay? Go ahead.
And I will tell you this, and I appreciate seeing I had 48 years' experience. I've had about 35, I feel older now. One of the things you'll find is in the current environment of community amphitheaters, when you start putting ticketing into place, what happens is people don't always value things when they're free. But then again, you don't want to get into a place where the community feels like we're really gouging on the cost. So the way the Eventbrite system works, when you're using a company, Eventbrite's probably the largest, many of you've seen it, the database is huge. It's the hugest, next to Ticketmaster. Ticketmaster's had a head start of 50 years or something, but the Ticketmaster's been around a long time. But Eventbrite, what they do is, and to kind of jump a little bit into Scott's question, we used Eventbrite going back for several festivals, and we realized that the database they build allows anybody to go in and put in a genre, an artist name. I like Billy Joel, tell me where he's playing, or artists that are tribute bands like him. So because you're using a database, this kind of a setup for our 10 shows that are paid, if somebody goes in and says, I want to know who's playing within a 50-mile radius. I actually do it a lot just to make sure I don't miss somebody. I wanted to see Toto, and they're coming to MGM, Northfield, whatever that's called, it's not the Roxino, but we were notified by email that, hey, there's a show coming, so we went on and bought our tickets. So Eventbrite is that same kind of a concept. You're able to go in and they kind of advertise for you, to be honest. That's kind of what they do. Now, we do have a website. We will use the email list, but the reason you change the dynamic, you can hit more people with a post than you could with a radio spot, because a radio spot is hit or miss, and you have to kind of count on. So it's the landscape's changed a lot, and you don't have to spend as much money on that. We do have some internal benefits of having we already have our own, you guys have an email list, we have a newsletter. The website, when we launched last year, or this year, in August, when we put the website up and started putting in the brass transit, many of you know my son Michael helped us build the website. He's done that he works for a large nonprofit, but he's done websites for years. He said in the first week we launched, we had 10,000 hits that first week. He thought that was crazy, because what happened was you guys, at the same time we were starting to put the website up, you did something on an email within the township. So that kind of started creating things on Facebook, and of course we posted Facebook, we did an Instagram page. So the way you kind of get away from all of the budgeting, because advertising, the way it used to be done, was you would buy maybe even TV, you might do some radio, you do some ads, print ads in magazines. We used to do stuff in local publications. Many of you aren't old enough to remember, like Scene Magazine, or some of the things. I remember doing stuff in the Mini Merchant, those kind of things. But I'm saying there's publications we could still do stuff with in the township publications, and I don't know if we even pay for that.
No.
I didn't budget it because I don't know if you pay for an ad within the township newsletter. So when you look at this spreadsheet, the one thing we did is went through, and you'll notice on the bottom I've listed low estimate, medium estimate, high estimate. Each group that's on here, you can go through and see, if you go straight down the line, if we did 1,500 tickets and then 1,750 and 2,000. We're trying to launch, we want to launch early, and we want to launch early so that people in January, we're thinking about January 15th would be a good launch date for Eventbrite. Eventbrite, I'll kind of get into the dynamics of that. It's very simple to use. It's actually, you can put it on your cell phone. We can teach people to scan in about 5 minutes, give them a pocket thing with wristbands in it. We can have wherever the pinch points are for ticketing. You can do that. It's very simple. Done it thousands of times. just so you guys get a little reference, I've done I tried to count, my wife said I'm probably a little low, but 2,300 concerts. Now, some of those are within festival formats, but when you're doing ticketing, the easiest one we've ever used has been Eventbrite. And we've also used Brushfire, which is another one that's competitive, but they don't have as big a database. So I love using Eventbrite. So, but when you look at the numbers here, we went through and used the $10 ticket, and then we added in, you'll see FOS, that's if we sell some front of stage. So I've had a few people that I mentioned were getting Michael Cavanaugh, and they're like, well, I want to buy one of your, can I get close? Well, that's what that is. Those are, we're talking about selling those at $20. So if you look at the front of stage, I'm adding at different levels, different amounts of tickets up front. And Rob, when we did the chairs and we identify the VIP, there's some VIP seating that'll come with the sponsorships. These are people that just say, I want to buy a seat to sit up close because I really love that artist or I love that style. So we added that in and we tried to go through, and like I said, we've been fortunate to be able to get under hospitality, it says 0. We've been able to get donations from the area restaurants to pay for our hospitality. So that's worked well. And then we've also been able to, you'll see hotels. Some of the artists are not local, so we have some hotels, but there's some that are 0 because they don't require it. They're in the area, they're driving home. But as you go through this under staff, Rob's, that's not all for me, by the way, he said staff costs. The money we have for staffing includes all of our fire, police, any ancillary costs for overtime. We tried to estimate it. You feel pretty comfortable we're in
We took the average of the 4 shows we did,
yeah.
the cost of those 4 shows based on each department, and what they brought to the table on an average,
Right.
understanding that can slide one way or the other, because we understand different personnel is gonna slide that scale up or back. We understand that, we're talking about an average. We felt pretty confident that per show out was right around, I think it was 6 or something right off the top of my head. And the reason we were doing that is we just broke down the department numbers that they gave me, and that we calculated our own and how that shook out at the end of the night, whether it's Chuck running the shuttle bus with a couple people and gators and stuff stationed across the way, or JP and 3 guys and a supervisor running the parking, and then my staff and I running the facility. And the other thing about ticketing too, when you talk about my guys running the facility, trash isn't coming in. We learned that. Trash doesn't come in that first hour. So we can station our 6 guys at the 3 main entryways, a couple of the choke points by the shelters and some of the other ancillary walk-ins, and we can pass those wristbands out and scan those tickets quickly and get them in with no additional cost to staffing any type of concert, because we already have the staff there and they're already capable of doing it.
Right. And I'll touch on the artist part because it kind of plays into why would I pick. It's not just looking for variety. You can go to things like Polestar and see who's actually putting people in seats. And the challenge has always been trying to get the artists that you want at a good price and getting them to come through the region when the timing helps them and helps us. So we've been able to get some really good routing. I started working on this back when we were doing Chicago, the Brass Transit concert. I started telling some of the agents, and you don't have to work with agents as much. Some of these bands are independent. So you just call in and say, hey, we see that you're doing very well. I had noticed at some of the shows when I saw Journey is a very popular music. The Journey music, if the bands are known, and this one is, Escape that we're having is very well known. And I did kind of go in and kind of jockey for position on these because I did book a lot of these for another venue a couple years ago. And so I was able to have relationships, but I also honored those relationships. I'm not stealing bands from other venues. I'm just going in and saying, hey, it's about time you come through Plain Township. So getting Elton Ron, he was in Green, I think it's called Greenfield, PA, or Greenville, PA. Again, he's done some paid shows, but he did the largest turnout of one of their regional venues. 5,000 people showed up. His concern now is that, those kind of artists, they start building a following. So what happens is somebody saw him in Youngstown, and they say, or they saw him in Worcester, or they saw him in Cleveland, and they're going to drive to Plain Township because the artist also is advertising for us. So to answer your question, which is a good question, is how do you get the word out? You want the artist to advertise for you. So their tour schedules will have our Plain Township, Legacy Park posted. Click on it, get a map, get directions, whatever. So the goal is to get enough buzz going that people that like a specific artist, we're not going to have any trouble with a few of these. They're just going to be more of a, you better buy your tickets because we're going to sell out. That's just what's going to happen on some of them. Some of them, it'll be a little bit slower, because it may not be an artist that's as known. But I mean, I think what we're seeing here is, I can do tracking. Michael Cavanaugh, like I said, is playing E.J. Thomas December 15th, and either you saw it too, I mean, it's close to.
It's close to selling out in their $100 tickets.
Yeah, it's expensive.
So those people will
Some people
come.
might wonder, is Michael Cavanaugh really coming with, like, is he bringing a band, or is he playing the banjo, and, you know, is this the same guy? So we are getting the Michael Cavanaugh. What we did, though, we routed him, he's playing at Lakeside, which is a 3,000-seat tabernacle up near Sandusky. That was a routing play, because Dorothy, that books for them, I've gotten to know her, and we're gonna start sharing, because they're 150, I think about 150 miles away. So when you get an artist playing there, it doesn't hurt us on ticketing, but it's a good move to do a routing. So we've done that on a couple. But I just think when you guys look in, if you wanna go in and look at some of the bands and their own, I guess you'd say their own Facebook page, maybe look at their Instagram, you can look at that and see. But we're gonna get, people already asking me, you know, what's your lineup, and how can we get tickets, and who are you having? So there'll be a buzz started as soon as we launch, the website announces. I'd like to do a little bit of a teaser where we put out what's called a sizzle reel. The sizzle reel is just basically a video that says, coming to Plain Township Amphitheater, the summer concert series. Doesn't take away from all the other things we're doing, the kids programming. We had a great animal show last year, we'll be doing all that kind of stuff. But we're gonna start right away in January hitting that, hey, if you'd like to come to these, we are limited. We gotta be honest, we are limited capacity. This is not Quicken Loans Arena. So if somebody says, I wanna come, my wife, and have dinner and see a show, we're gonna tell people, get your tickets early. And we also are advocating for a season pass, which we could do through Eventbrite, which is, instead of paying $10 a show, you pay $90 and you get one free. Now, there's people that will buy those and not come. And sometimes that's just because of life happens, and sometimes we already have their money. They don't want a refund, they're just bought it, and there is no refunds. You don't do refunds. Now, to answer Scott's question, which is a good one, when we have a rain delay or a lightning delay or a rain out, typically what happens is, if the artists are from the area, I will tell you that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these artists, we know we can go to and say, could we get a reschedule? We don't want to lose our deposit. We don't want to. Now, what do we lose if there's a show like we had this year where you have to cancel a show? You would have some time in with your staff. We would have some expense for some things we've already done. Not a lot, but if we could reschedule them, in some cases, we're asking artists to consider possibly rolling over to the Friday. But it ends up, economically, it ends up better to, it's a little bit of a risk-reward thing. If you buy rain insurance, you pay about 20% of your fee, 20 to 25% of what you're paying an artist. So if we have a $20,000 show and the rain insurance is, let's say, $2,000, $2,500, they make you do measurable, it's like when they go to these golf outings, you have somebody sitting there to see if you have a hole-in-one. It's the same thing. They're sitting there going, how much rain did we get? If it goes to a certain point, we get a check. So we're over there. At some point, we're probably saying, rain, rain, rain. It's rain, we want to get money. But I suggest that in this kind of an environment, you basically say, it's going to take a real bad rainstorm. Lightning is another issue. You sometimes delay shows for a half hour, let lightning pass. And we've worked with, I think we've talked about that, Chuck, before, about if there's lightning, we have to do things to prevent people from getting in an unsafe environment. So having 10 shows, you're kind of playing the odds that you may have a show that you have to either postpone. And again, if somebody's on Eventbrite, they say, I only want to come to this one show. Eventbrite has a very simple process where you press a button and say, all of the refunds could go out at one time to anybody that wants it. We usually tell them in 3 days you'll get your money. So you don't want somebody mad at you, even if it's a $10 ticket. You know. Now there are some fees, so typically they'll end up being, you can even pad these, which I don't like to call it that, but what I'm saying is you can add, you know, service charges. Typically, people that, when you do that, you can make an extra $1 saying we want to charge processing. I'm advocating to keep that really low, so if you buy a ticket for $10, you might have a couple $1 handling fee. So that's going to be $12 to somebody. So if they have 2 tickets and it's $24 and they say, we can't go, we can't come back to the reschedule. then you refund them. But then you can resell, you can still sell tickets for the next show.
But it's all done through Eventbrite, it's
It's all done
nothing
through
that the
Eventbrite.
township has to do.
No, the township would not have to go in and start writing refunds. It's all done through the credit card processing through, if it's Stripe or Square.
I love Eventbrite, we used to work it through.
So anyways, but those are all good questions, because what you're dealing with is if you have a rain out, that's the, I still, when I hear the R word at shows, I get shaky sometimes thinking, but I've only had in 30-some years doing outdoor festivals, we've had 2 shows that were totally canceled, and that's in 35 years. We've had rain come and delay a show and ask an artist to maybe come play an hour, play in 2 hours. But it takes a lot to knock a show out. We did have a couple this year that we determined early not to do them, but it was a local artist. And he was very kind to, you guys know the story, that was just one of those where we didn't want to get into a situation where we waited here to see what the weather was, we kind of got ahead of it. But you can do that on shows where you're not paying as much and you're also not, you can reschedule. So.
Are there any other questions off the top? We're just trying to get it all in, I know that we have limited time.
No, I have 9 questions, but you covered them all. Which is good.
I talk fast.
Scott, any more questions that we can cover off the top?
I mean, and honestly, even when I was looking at advertising, I wasn't thinking of the newspaper. I wasn't thinking of local.
Yeah,
I'm just still looking at the social media where, hey, here's the target demographics, here's how much spend I wanna do per day. Even to me, that's still $250 done.
Well, here's what I'll tell you too, when you get advertising dollars, or not advertising, when you get sponsorship dollars in, a lot of times what you'll do is you'll look at your budget and you'll say, we have an extra, like for example, this year when Rob was out, he did a lot of the marketing on the sponsorships. If we get a sponsor comes in and we end up noticing on one show, we got an extra chunk here, we're way ahead. You'll notice on the sheet that says sponsor income, I average 5,000 per show across the board. Here's what's gonna happen. As soon as people realize we're having a lot of traffic here, you're gonna have more and more interest in, people wanna know how many people are here, and they wanna get in front of them. So when we get more revenue, we don't have to just spend $250. But the reason I use $250 is if you've ever bought ads on Facebook or Instagram, you can target it. First off, you find out, as I said, you target your market, then market your target. So what we've always done with our events, if it's an event that's a certain crowd, if you can get away with selling your tickets, early on you'll know. But if you start seeing the activity is just taking a life of its own, particularly when you have artists that have their sites promoting the shows. Here's our 2024 schedule, and people start buying tickets. We're gonna be drawing outside of Plain Township.
And
I
our
hope-
sponsors will advertise for us. and-
Right, but I think to answer this, you can throw money in. We've done things like, it's 2 weeks out, and we're at 1,200 tickets, and we're like, we really would like to get this up to 1,750. So then you can start targeting Facebook ads, Instagram, Spotify, but the challenge is, what I noticed when I've done a lot of these is, you kind of get a sense for some of these groups, they'll sell kind of on their own because they're known. But I think there's a point where you might not have $250 per show. You might take $250 from Michael Cavanaugh because he kind of sells himself. But you might move that over and say, we're gonna move that for the Vindies. Because we wanna do some ads, maybe some social media, do some geo-fencing ads in Youngstown. So if we do that, we can maybe take $500. But I just noticed that anymore with these kind of, we also have the natural marketing that's gonna happen because of all the other things we're doing right now, so.
And we were very concerned about the ticket sale, the number of tickets sold.
I don't show a sellout on any of these on here. I show that we have still 500 tickets left over. I said there's 2,000 tickets on sale. If we go on sale and start selling for 5 months, I would like to advocate that some of the merchants, I've talked to a few and said maybe just buy a batch of tickets and give them to your best customers or offer them as incentives. Come have dinner here tonight, we're gonna give you 2 free tickets to see Michael Cavanaugh.
But budgeting low, what we're looking at is, there's probably 4 or 5 acts on here we could point to today that if we're honest, and we look at the Polestar numbers, and we look at what they brought in and where they brought it in and how many they brought in, and the level of sale ticket price being so much higher than ours, we're pretty confident we're gonna sell out those shows. But we don't wanna budget for that, we wanna budget low, come in high if we're fortunate.
Well,
Maybe we get real lucky like we did for some years in the farmer's market, we don't get a rain day for 2 or 3 years. Great, awesome. Or we'll we'll do our best to avoid that cancellation at all costs, but go from there. So I guess, I realize we're running up against it, I
Yeah,
apologize.
we have 6 minutes.
I do have resolutions that we can either consider or table. The only concern I have about tabling is that last one with the band deposit. We just, that group, that deposit, if you look at that back one, is for 5 of those 10 bands to just lock them in for next year.
They're with
So-
one agency called TSC, and we really, they were gonna route around us now, and they're waiting. So they're saying, are we playing or we're not playing? So when you get this early on, we wanna get them in, and otherwise we could lose them, so we're just trying to.
It's
So
so
go ahead
fast.
and present the resolution.
Should I present the resolutions then?
Yes.
Thank you for the insightful,
Yes, and feel free to
Presentation.
contact me with
Yeah.
any questions off.
There's a reason why we had this workshop here and not after the first of the year, because we knew we've got to get moving on this.
Yeah.
Because we want to hit the ground running in January
You
with
need
not
one.
only the schedule, but sponsorships.
And developing the website.
Absolutely.
So the first one would be a resolution to adopt the use of Eventbrite.
We've
for all-
got, you don't have to read it for us.
Yeah.
I
Oh, that's
present-
just the top.
present the resolution.
Or-
That's what I was
we
doing.
Looking to do it during this meeting.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
this.
sorry,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I apologize, I should have explained that, it's my fault. A resolution to adopt the use of Eventbrite for all Legacy Park Amphitheater ticketed programming.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
yes,
The next one is a resolution to adopt the amphitheater programming calendar for 2024, along with the attached calendar, which is what you see here, and budgeted estimated costs and revenues.
second,
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
yes,
Final one is a resolution to authorize payment to TSC Entertainment for the 2024 Legacy Park Amphitheater programming deposits for those games.
So moved.
Second, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion, the only discussion I want to have is, you guys have put a lot of work into this. We've had a lot of meetings collectively where we beat things back and forth. We've talked about a lot of things. We've included costs, we've included community inclusion, sponsors. And we've covered just about every possible area that we could cover up to this point. So I appreciate you guys' hard work on that. I've been to most of the meetings, and we've played devil's advocate. We've done a lot of things. So getting this started, I think, is going to be critical to getting that moving. So having said that, anything else?
Rob, I apologize, I was having flashbacks, as I told John, I was literally thinking work session,
Yeah.
not special meetings, so I'm like.
This is a little better for
And I will have you know,
Yeah, it is.
as much as I have trouble with needing extra tons for a country concert, I understand the revenue it brings. So, having said that,
You don't have,
Yeah.
you don't have one of the best crowds.
That's, yeah.
Okay, roll call.
He keeps
Mr.
everybody out of
Hawes?
executive session.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Harless?
yes.
so long as I can earn, thank you.
This special meeting will now come to an end, and we will start our regular meeting.
You have to motion to adjourn.
Oh, okay,
Make a
that's right.
motion to adjourn at
Second.
5:55.
Yeah, 5:55. And I'll second. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion, roll call.
Mrs. Harless?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.